Hi everyone, my name is Xander and I have a box opening for everyone of Omens and Nexus packs. The reason why I got a bunch of Nexus is because I have almost every Atlantean Empire figure. Um, the only ones I don't have are from Nexus, and I own every Atlantis Guild figure, so I was trying to hope to finish my collection. And I got some Omens packs to try and hope for a chance of getting some ultra rares. So I'll get right to it and open these packs to give us a little bit of entertainment during quarantine. I have a little bit of a janky setup for the camera, so we'll see how this goes. Um, Now, in terms of Nexus, it was the last set made for Mage Knight, as I'm sure a lot of Mage Knight fans know. It has some spicy figures, but a lot of them kind of janky or not so great, but we'll see how it goes and see what I happen to pull. I'll do a little bit of commentary on the figures I get, and hopefully some of them are good. So the first one I got here is Seeker Elidia. I like the original Seeker because she had both bound and charge magic healing. Can't bound magic heal anymore in 2.0, but this one's still not bad, all things considered. A decent ranged attacker, has Oracle of Roko subfaction, a decent magic healer, and command. Maybe a little expensive for 74 points, but not bad. Unfortunately, a little bit click rot in terms of how the sticker is sticking to the dial, but decent figure. Paint job is not too bad. Unfortunately, the Nexus wasn't the best paint job, maybe because they were using older models, but still a very cool figure. Ooh, next one, I got the Necropolis Judge. I always like the model on this one. Unfortunately, the paint job on the Nexus is not the best. The original Necropolis Judge I like quite a bit. This one's still pretty cool. The face is a little muddied up. In terms of a dial, it's a pretty good dial, all things considered. 18 defense with Terrify is quite nice. 12 effective attack. Close combat, 3 damage, not awful. Has Venom, and has some vampirism to get it back. I'm just going to be right back and grab a flight dial so I can move this. Back with the flight dial so I can actually move this a bit better. There we go. So base stats, very fast. Surges into, again, not too bad. It loses Terrify, but it maintains its stats otherwise. And then another hit goes into Vampirism for 2 clicks. So the early stats are good. The rest of that is predictable. Many 2.0 figures drops off, but not a bad figure overall. Ooh, next I have a Atlantean figure I don't have yet, so I'm very excited. Xandrescent Sailor. In terms of a figure, he has 17 defend, which is not awful. Has Pathfinder and Submerge, and a decent speed, 10 attack, 3 damage, not bad. Surges into 9 attack, 3 damage, not the best, but not the worst either. His stats unfortunately drop off pretty quickly, and it's a very short dial, but regardless, I'm happy I have the Xandrescent Sailor now. One more figure for Atlantis. Last figure for this pack is an Arcane Apprentice. Another Solanavi. Solanavi and Shift, and even Draconum got a decent number of new units in this, using different character dials or models from older Mage Knight sets. Unfortunately, a mediocre figure, all things considered, as Mage Blast with Pierce, which is not bad, but an 8-inch range unfortunately makes it pretty not good. Still, need to have another figure I don't own yet. That was the first pack. Let us keep on moving on with more. Now this is a very cool figure in terms of model. I personally like the original model more from Minions. But still, I'm very glad to have this now because it's still a very cool figure. Um, this guy, at least from the original Minions version, I remember, was kind of like a souped-up death merchant. Um, they took the same sort of inspiration in the sense that this guy's um, high speed, decent attack, and weapon master, and kind of made him a bit more streamlined. His stats are pretty stable, and if he loses weapon master, he gains 4 damage and charge even. So he is a pretty nasty beater. He even gains vampirism and parry, although unfortunately parry will, I guess, attempt to keep him alive in his poorer clicks, but he is a pretty potent figure, all things considered, and a very cool model, if I say so myself. No sub-faction, but he's relatively cheap, and he's a cool model. Happy about that one. Another thing that I like about Nexus is I've didn't really play with the figures. I stopped around Dark Riders. I collected sorcery in case I would ever play with them, but didn't get to play sorcery or Nexus. So this is extra exciting for me. Another very exciting one that I just now pulled is Death Speaker Dark. Now I actually have the original Dark the Corrupt. It's very cool because he's like a souped up Order of Vlad. Now this one is even stronger at a very expensive 172 points, but he has 270 degree arc, magic immunity, invulnerability, charge, venom, command, 5 damage, blood cultist, which I find kind of interesting lore wise. I guess he kind of became a pawn of Death Speaker and eventually Dark Prophet Eridon, but regardless, this guy is a beater, but as you can kind of see on his dial stats, he plummets pretty rapidly, which is unfortunate for such a figure. So high value, and eventually gains the unfortunate frenzy. That said, his attack is not too bad. It doesn't drop below 8, comes back up to 9 and then 10, and then he goes demoralize. So I think he is a relatively stable, despite his stats plummeting rapidly, they don't go that far low. Perhaps the Blood Cultist sub-faction might be able to heal him a little bit. So another very exciting figure. In terms of the factions, I very much like, obviously, Atlantis, as I said in the beginning, but my other faction I like is specifically the Order of Vlad subset from Necropolis. I have my first Apocalypse figure that I pulled here. Erwin Painbringer, originally from Necropolis and Pyramids, I think. Maybe Dragon's Gate, actually. Or no, she might have been Knights Immortal. Regardless, she is now Apocalypse. Has the Bedlam sub-faction ability, and is not, actually looking at the first style, although it's boring, it's not the worst figure. As Pierce, 12 range, not bad. 11 attack, 3 damage at range is pretty good for a magic user. Drops a little bit of attack, but gains Terrify, which is not bad. But then, unfortunately, gains Frenzy. Very too bad. It does gain, looks like, Life Drain, which is pretty decent. Maintains Terrify for a little bit, gets Cursed, and then drops off a little bit. Pretty neat figure, as she got corrupted. But yeah. See, last figure for this pack is an exciting one. So my dad, when he played, his favorite faction was the Knights Immortal. So I kind of like to collect figures kind of in his name to continue with that. And what I have today is a very useful unit, the War Bard. Now, something I unfortunately didn't realize when I played 2.0 back in the day was how useful leadership is. So this guy is pretty much a straight support piece. He has the free armies, I think. Yeah, free armies. So faction, so he can force march with other free armies at 10 speed, which unfortunately the sub-faction is not the best, but if he did force march, that's pretty useful. He has leadership, which is great. He can even hold his own with 10 attack, 3 damage in melee. And Hex, which I didn't use too much, but my understanding is it's a not bad ability. His stats drop off, but pretty precipitously, but again, he shouldn't be getting into much combat, and even if he does, he can kind of hold his own. So, a nice figure. His face looks a little bit derpy. I don't know if I can get it to focus, but overall a nice model as well. At least in my opinion, much better than the original War Bards, although their Force March is perhaps a little bit more useful than it exists in 2.0. So first one here is Amir, good old guy originally from Pyramids. Let's see if that can focus. There we go. He changes his stats a little bit from the original incarnation. The original one had Charge and Weapon Master in a very large arc. This guy only is 135 now, but he does gain Sweep. Has Dodge, which is very nice. 3 damage is respectable. Loses Dodge immediately, but gains Toughness. Maintains his Charge and gets Counterattack. 16 defense might not help with that, but still it's not a bad ability to have. And he is remarkably stable, actually, maintaining 10 attack for a decent amount. Goes down to 9, picks up Weapon Master, and all in all, not too bad. Gains dodge when he demoralizes so that he doesn't completely die off. But he's a very long dial and pretty good, actually, all things considered. I'm not much of a BPR fan, but I do like the Galeshi from them. They're a neat faction of people. Next is a figure I actually already have, and is a very interesting one. Won't talk too long about him, but it's the Inquisitor. This one I actually managed to get from an auction on eBay already, but it's a not a unique piece, so I can have multiple. Although that said, I probably won't run them because, interestingly, from 1.0, the Inquisitors were effectively the unlimited version of the Rebellion's Magus. This guy became I guess is no longer part of the Magus suite in the lore. He's now part of the Imperial Legion down there, that sub-faction, and has gained a whole bunch of melee abilities, which I guess makes sense given the pike. He has command and a respectable damage, 10 attack, or 11 attacking close range, 4 damage, but it drops off, and he is unfortunately very characteristic again of Atlanteans, very slow. 8 movement. As soon as he surges, he drops an attack as well. Not an awful figure, but not particularly good when there are much better other alternatives, even within Atlantis, probably. Next one is a Dwarven Thunder Gunner. The cool thing about this guy, at least in 1.0, was he had, I believe, 4 targets. Almost literally thunder gunning opponents down. This one only has 2 targets, which is a little sad to see, but has Pierce, which is a nice ability, and 3 damage at range, which is better than the original incarnation. The interesting thing, though, is this is part of the Forge Masters sub-faction, which is unfortunately useless because it's a sword attack, which is also very strange, considering it's a thunder gunner. I wouldn't expect sword attack. I'd expect maybe a wand attack type to take advantage of the Forge Master ability, or bow attack type, considering it's a gun. But 9 range is not great, but not awful. Toughness is nice. Pierce gains Frenzy, which I guess is the thunder part of the gunning. And while his initial melee damage is only 2 or so, it comes back up to 3 towards the end of his dial. Attack is fairly stable, only drops to 8, but has a fairly short dial. But yeah, the model, again, I like the 1.0 model a bit more, but this, I guess, fits a bit better in terms of color-wise, the current scheme. Lastly, for this pack, I have a Mage spawn. First one from my Nexus packs is the Krug Headhunter. The Krug were a kind of neat race of people for the Mage spawn. Their mounted units were quite good. In terms of this guy, he's got Terrify, which I guess he is rather terrifying, carrying bones and a skull on his shield and a head right there. He's a neat unit. 10 attack weapon master is not bad. Toughness also very nice. Although he loses Terrify immediately, he does gain Crushing Blow, which is very handy if you want to surge. His attack drops and he gains parry and counterattack, which is not actually all that bad with 15. Could be better, but compared to other units, that's not bad. And he's stays stable for, what's that, 4 or 5 clicks? 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks. He's still remarkably stable. Unfortunately, lower attack and defense, but not bad. Gains Frenzy at the end to finally kill himself. Jumps up to 4 damage, but with a 7 attack, can't really take advantage of that, and then becomes demoralized. 42 points. I guess if you're in need of some mage spawn, he's a pretty decent beater in close combat. So lastly, I'll open one Omens pack to change it up a little bit, and I'll probably call it for this video. So first here is a Goblin Raider, a cheap little harasser, not bad, 9 attack, 2 damage, pretty handy, 17 points, very cheap. 8 speed is not the best for a harasser, you'd like it faster, but stealth helps with being picked off. Gains dodge, very handy for a harasser and very annoying to deal with. Crushing Blow, not bad also, it can get rid of, can harass toughness figures, or even dodge figures that opponents have. Maintains that 9 attack, great surge unit. Keeps dodge, goes down to 1 damage, but again, this is mostly timing up units. Not really dealing damage, but if it can, that's great. Then it becomes demoralized. So not a bad figure, actually. Very frustrating to deal with. Dial's a little tough to turn, but cool figure. I think actually that might be the first Goblin Raider I own. So that's awesome. Next one is something that I'm not as keen on, but I have a few of them, is the Wave Spawn. Reminds me of Deep Spawn from the 1.0 figures. He has Submerged and Charge, which can be a decent combination, but at 35 points, 9 attack, 2 damage, not great. I guess you can use it as a harasser, but unfortunately, unlike the Raider, this guy's a more expensive piece. So I guess if you make a bunch of them, they're not bad. His dial is not the best. Next click is fairly stable compared to the first, but then drops attack after that. So overall, it's not awful, but for 35 points, you could probably find a lot better. I guess the one benefit is if you wanted a submerged team, he's not too bad for that. Let's see what else we got in this Omens pack. Ooh, this is one that I actually like the sculpt on a lot. It is the Moonborn Sorceress. It's a very cool sculpt. Got this, I think it's actually Galeshi that got turned to the Necropolis and Dark Crusaders. But this blood moon kind of staff, kind of cool, almost like ears or like neck piece, like bat wings. Very cool cloaked figure. This one has Summon, which is pretty good, 53 points. You can summon a lot of decent stuff there. Has Hex and Mage Blast, so it acts as both a support figure, but if opponents get in close range, again, 8 range is not great for Mage Blast, but it can be used to defend herself if needed. She even gains invulnerability, or is that Ghost Form? That is Ghost Form actually late, so not too bad. So that can be used there to protect yourself. Short dial, but I guess good for a summoner that can especially defend themselves. Let's see, before I show the last figure, I'll look at the card I got. The Relic is Staff the Silent Citadel. This is a neat card because it sets the range damage value to 3, so it can buff a weak attacker, or weak damager at least. And they can protect friendly figures with the special ability. So it's kind of a neat card, very unique in its applications. The last, which I think I have this figure already, is Fis Okro. So I'm not going to unbag him in case anyone wants him completely sealed, because I'm pretty sure I have him already. Now, it's a champion shift. It's got a very strange one, and WizKids, at least as of the time that Omens was released, specified this is not an error. He has an 8-inch range and 0 damage, and one of his dials has Bound and Mage Blast, which in 2.0 you can't actually use together, so his Bound is effectively useless. You could actually, interestingly, pair him up with Staff Silent Citadel, so you could Bound and then have a range damage value of 3. That said, you're adding 41 points to this figure to make him not awful, so maybe not the best thing to do. But if you do want Champion Shift and you do need a shift that can wield relics, this guy's, I guess, one of your options. Probably also a summon, but interesting figure. So my janky setup is screaming at me right now, so I'm going to end it for this recording. I'll do a few more box openings just so I can get through everything and see what else I pull. So thank you everyone for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that jazz. I don't really care about that. I just wanted to make this for the Mage Knight community. So thank you, and on to more openings in a little bit.